You know, I'm gonna be honest. When I first heard that people were upset by how much of a jackass Jax was at the end of the second episode of the Amazing Digital Circus, I was confused. Maybe it's a difference in expectation, but when I first watched the episode, Jax just seemed to be acting exactly how I'd expect him to after the first one. I don't know, maybe people were expecting his sad boy backstory immediately, or for him to be nice at some point, or couldn't comprehend that, yeah, he's completely willing to put his immortal friends in physical danger. I say all of this because I rewatched every episode in preparation for the latest episode, Untitled, and it created an interesting thread between Jax and Ragatha, with Pomni stuck in the middle. The Amazing Digital Circus has always been a story about people coping with the horrible reality they currently find themselves in. The fact that that reality isn't exactly like ours wasn't that big an issue because it just enhanced the existential horror of the whole situation. The first two episodes focused on Pomni, and of course, that makes sense. She's the main character and the latest addition to the circus. We would be paying attention to what she's doing more than anything else. Across both of these episodes, she comes to terms with where she's trapped and learns to trust in her fellow inmates as people who are in it with her. We started the formula of also looking at how other characters are coping with the situation by breaking Gummy Goo's reality, but he was an NPC that got maybe deleted. The third and fourth episodes branched out to look at Kinger and his insanity, Gangle's struggle with her emotions, and Zooble's body dysmorphia. But there are two characters who went surprisingly unexplored across these episodes, especially considering they're the characters Pomni was immediately paired with, Jax and Ragatha. Now, I've already discussed Jax to some length earlier in this video and even in my last video on this show. He's a jackass whose coping mechanism has the side effect of inconveniencing everyone around him. He embraces the madness of his situation and works to have as much fun as possible through violence, even if it's in the form of abusing NPCs and bullying his co-stars. When they were going after the Gummy Gang, he showed a complete lack of care for the well-being of the NPCs and a complete lack of remorse towards hurting everyone he knows is real. But even then, there were signs that he was just coping and isn't completely malicious. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're obligated to feel bad for him. Not every coping mechanism is going to be nice enough to not harm others, and regardless, Jax doesn't mind making everyone hate him as long as he can be stimulated. And there were some instances sprinkled into his character, like his reaction to hearing about Kaufmo's funeral, a situation where someone was actually permanently hurt. Before this episode, the most honest we get to see him is when he's trapped in the fast food industry. With a lack of craziness to inflict and an inability to inflict craziness onto others, he just acts normal, to the point of freaking Pomni out. And I think it's worth noting that after the employee reevaluation he went through, where Gangle projected her issues with giving up on her dreams onto him while wearing the unbreakable happy mask, in this one, he found himself wondering about how happy she was actually capable of being, in a very rare moment of humanity. Ragatha was comparably more docile than Jax, which is why I think this episode really does more for us understanding her character than anyone else. She was the immediate positive influence Pomni needed in the wake of entering the circus, and she's always been nice and pleasant. But even from the first episode where she was assuming Kaufmo was upset because she kept fake laughing at his jokes, we get hints that her unnaturally positive attitude is, well, unnatural. Once again, we can look at how she acts in episode 4, specifically while under the effects of the stupid juice, making her say a bunch of negative things she normally wouldn't, like calling Zooble a grouch, or calling the happy Gangle annoying, or even complaining that Pomni is trying to reconnect with the revived Gummy Goo instead of talking to the other performers. I'm still trying to come up with names for the clown crew. Last video I settled on circus freaks, but honestly it's kinda fun to just keep going. This is interesting because it also reveals that on some level she also just sees them as NPCs, even if she tries to be nice to them. Ragatha's coping mechanism is essentially overloading positivity regardless of how she's really feeling, like hating Jax but not wanting him to hate her. She wants to feel like she's a positive influence on others. This can lead to people, especially Jax, finding it hard to take her behavior, and her actual negative feelings also tend to slip out at unexpected times, such as bringing up Jax no longer having any friends. Even as early as episode 2, Pomni told Ragatha that she didn't need to hype her up like a child. Similar to how Jax gets his kicks from tormenting others, Ragatha seems to derive stability from creating a positive environment and befriending others. Episode 5 follows the characters jumping through a bunch of adventures, but we also get to see them discuss their lives before the circus, and see that for a lot of them, they just brought their coping mechanisms over from the real world. Beyond that, we also get to see just how Ragatha and Jax clash even more. We already knew Ragatha isn't a fan of how Jax acts. That's kind of the general consensus. But we also see Jax's frustration at how she's nice all the time and how uncomfortable it makes him. Something Pomni winds up somewhat agreeing with later in the episode when she says something similar to the wealthy farm girl. We also get more information on Pomni and how she did weird things for thrills too to get through her somewhat mundane but stable life as an accountant. Like exploring abandoned buildings and posting videos of herself doing that on YouTube just for herself. Okay, I think I get why she and Jax may get along. Something Ragatha seems to also notice and not be a fan of, and yet stumble her way through trying to get through the situation, as we see in her attempt to win Pomni back over by reminiscing about Kaufmo smashing her up like it's a funny memory, and how it falls flat. Because it wasn't funny, and pretending it was is weird. This episode is both an excuse to have several mini adventures and gain a peek into everyone's psyche once you figure out who suggested what. Ragatha created a normal game of softball where everyone can get together to play. Jax created an opportunity for him to hunt the others, and President Pomni versus the Australia-New Zealand War. This shows both the problem with Jax as well as the appeal. He's selfish and completely willing to hurt others for his own amusement with zero remorse. But he's also fun. President Pomni, once you factor in that they weren't in any actual danger, is fun. That's the appeal of Jax and his more laid back, I don't care about the NPCs attitude. He can be fun in small doses when he isn't victimizing anyone and just embracing the chaos. In this scene where Pomni laughs while he's assaulting the evil Jax NPC, she clearly finds it amusing, but that fact makes her and Ragatha less comfortable around each other because she knows the two of them don't like each other. It creates a push and pull feeling on who is having the most influence on the newest member, and Ragatha is clearly having issues with the feeling that Jax, for all his assholish behavior, might be winning her over. I mean, I don't think he will. Pomni's just being open-minded about him. I think it's important to note that while I call these two sides of the same coin, it's not to imply that they have an equal effect, because they don't. Their habits are destructive, but Jax's are only outwardly destructive. Ragatha helps people. She helps Gangle in this episode. She's only really destructive to herself. And can I just say, I am also anticipating when she has an emotional outburst. But here's the thing. This isn't about who's better for everyone else. This is about who's coping with their situation the best. And with the information available at the moment, Jax is kinda winning. Oh, he's definitely got damage. You'd have to be blind or someone in the show without the audience's omniscient view to deny that. But he still appears to be less self-destructive. And given his reaction to having the jokes played back on him, it's also pretty clear that everyone acting like he does would make things even less peaceful. Especially because this is still about Pomni, who is an adult fully capable of making her own poor life decisions. So really, we should be keeping our eye on her and how she feels about all of this, because she's not a fan of being infantilized. But we don't really know the true payoff for all of this, because when it comes to character, this episode was more set up than anything else, and I think this little triangle is gonna come to a head in the next one. It's apparently going to be focused on Jax in the same way this one was focused on Ragatha, which I'm hoping means we get more focus on both of them. There is no shot we're concluding that Jax is right because he's an asshole, but the conclusion it does reach will be interesting to see nonetheless. Shout out to my patrons, A and Skyman. What did you think of this episode? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you, and good day.